Today's discussion will focus on a significant apostolic prayer, Paul's prayer in Ephesians 3:14-19, which highlights the importance of spiritual growth and transformation for followers of the way, especially emphasizing the inner man or inner being. To understand this prayer from the perspective of ancient Hebrew thought as taught in the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, we should consider how Paul, a well-educated Jewish Pharisee who turned to be a follower of the way, deeply rooted in Hebrew theology, would have understood the significance of the inner man.
Our goal in this discussion is to analyze the key elements of the prayer and connect them to Hebrew anthropology and theology, demonstrating how Paul adapts these ideas for his Gentile audience who lived in the Greco-Roman culture and who may have had a good understanding of Greek moral philosophy.
First, in ancient Hebrew thought, the structure and functions of the human body were not seen as a split between body and soul, as in Greek dualism, but as a unified whole, with various aspects of existence intertwined. The inner man, in the ancient Hebrew understanding of lev or leb, often expressed through the concept of the heart as the core of being.
The inner man is a concept that deeply connects with ancient Hebrew ideas of human identity and God's transformative work. It's important to understand that when Paul mentions the inner man, he is referencing this comprehensive Hebrew idea of the heart as the core of a person's being.
This is a crucial point for sure. The heart is where a person connects with God, as shown in the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, in Deuteronomy 6:5.
The Torah teaches that humanity was created to live in communion with God, reflecting His image and maintaining a covenant relationship with a pure heart. Sin disrupted this, hardening the heart, breaking the organic covenant, and separating people from God, as in Isaiah 59, verse 2.
Second, in the Torah, it is taught that Yahweh's Ruach, meaning Yahweh's breath, is the life-giving and renewing power that animates humanity, as in Genesis 2:7, and transforms the heart, as in Ezekiel 36:26 and 27. Therefore, Paul's prayer for the Ruach to strengthen the inner man reflects that the Ruach empowers the follower's core identity to be born again, aligned with God's will and purposes in a restored covenant relationship, as well as being a family member and a bride of Yeshua, as they walk the path established by Yeshua.
We can see that Paul's prayer taps into the Tanakh's hope of restoration. Through a renewed heart, the Ruach's strength fulfills promises like Ezekiel 36:26-27, where God gives a new heart and vitality for covenant faithfulness.
Yahweh's presence restored by the indwelling Ruach and Yeshua in the hearts of followers of the way answers the longing for God's presence to return, as in the temple or the promise of Emmanuel in Isaiah 7:14.
Okay, we have laid a helpful foundation to explore the significance of Paul's prayer in Ephesians 3:14-19.
Yeah, and this would be a good time to analyze Paul's prayer within the Hebrew context, as taught in the Torah. In verse 16, the emphasis is on God's breath. Paul prays that Yahweh would give the Ephesians strength through his Ruach in your inner being.
In Hebrew, chesed, translated as strength, often means steadfastness or resolve, especially in the context of covenant faithfulness. As in Joshua 1:9, be strong and courageous. The Ruach's work in the heart strengthens the followers, empowering them to remain steadfast in faith and obedience.
Then the significance of this strengthening is not physical or emotional, but a profound spiritual renewal of the inner person, echoing Yahweh's promise to give His people a new heart and vitality to live out His covenant, as in Ezekiel 36:26 and 27.
In verse 17, the focus is on the indwelling. Paul prays that Yeshua, the anointed Messiah, may dwell in your hearts through faith.
In Hebrew, shakan, meaning to dwell or to reside, conveys the idea of settling down or inhabiting a place, often with a sense of purpose or community. It recalls Yahweh's presence living among His people in the tabernacle or temple, as in Exodus 25:8. Paul personalizes this by acknowledging Yeshua's presence in the heart, thus making each follower a temple where God resides.
The significance of this matches the Torah's idea of Yahweh's words being on your heart in Deuteronomy 6:6, shaping a person's whole life. And the Messiah living in the heart means his character and teachings influence the follower's thoughts, will, and actions.
In verses 18 and 19, the emphasis is on the love of Yeshua. Paul prays that the followers may understand the vast dimensions of the Messiah's love, the breadth, the length, the height, and the depth, which go beyond human understanding.
In Hebrew thought, chesed is Yahweh's covenantal loyalty and steadfast commitment, as in Psalm 136, which states, "His steadfast love endures forever." The love of the Messiah embodies this chesed, a comprehensive, transformative power. The four-dimensional imagery might also reflect the Hebrew view of God's presence filling the cosmos, as in Psalm 36, verse 5.
I'd like to take a moment to point out that in ancient Hebrew culture, love was viewed as a tangible commitment demonstrated through actions rather than just an emotional feeling. Unlike modern abstract ideas of love, ancient Hebrew practical thinking focused on concrete, observable deeds such as protection, provision, and loyalty. For example, the metaphor of a shepherd caring for sheep vividly shows love as active care and responsibility, reflecting how love was seen as something lived out daily.
Yeah, the Hebrew word ahava is based on actions like giving and providing, emphasizing that love is shown through what someone does for others. Similarly, the term chesed highlights faithfulness and mercy, especially in the context of covenants, whether between God and his people or in human relationships like marriage. This demonstrates that love was closely connected to loyalty and duty, not just feelings.
Thus, in ancient Hebrew concrete thought, love was a lived experience, inseparable from one's behavior and responsibilities toward others. Okay, getting back on track. The importance of Yeshua's love measure is that Paul prays for the followers' hearts to be so renewed that they can experience and understand this divine love, which reshapes their identity and relationships.
Lastly, verse 19 focuses on being filled. Paul concludes by praying that they be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God.
In Hebrew thought, tselem highlights the biblical idea of resemblance or representation of humanity bearing Elohim's image, as in Genesis 1:26 and 27. To be filled with God's fullness means to fully embody his character, holiness, love, justice, and shalom peace. It also reflects the priestly blessing in Numbers 6:24 to 26, where God's presence fills his people with blessing and wholeness.
Therefore, the significance of the inner man becomes a vessel for God's presence, shining with his glory and fulfilling his purposes in the world. We can conclude that Paul's prayer in Ephesians 3, viewed through ancient Hebrew thought, is a plea for the followers' inner man, their heart, the core of their being, to be transformed by Yahweh's breath, his Ruach, so that the Ruach strengthens their inner identity. The Messiah dwells in their hearts as God's presence, and they are filled with God's love and character.
We should also emphasize that Paul, rooted in his Jewish heritage, invites the Gentile Ephesian followers of the way into this Hebrew vision of restoration that they were grafted into, where their inner man becomes a dwelling place for God, fully aligned with his will and purposes. We, too, need to remember that all the wisdom and revelation given to Moses, the prophets, and the apostles were in ancient Hebrew concrete thought. Yeshua, the anointed Messiah, also taught using the same.
Yes, you are right. We need to revisit how English and Greek thinking connect to ancient Hebrew ideas. We also must remember the influence on Jewish scribes and teachers, as well as the early church fathers and thinkers from the Canaanites, Babylonians, Greeks, Romans, and other sects. It's important to stay true to the roots of our faith and walk shared in our Bible.
If you, listeners, have areas of interest you'd like to explore further, questions or comments, please let us know.